Thank you very much, John. Great. So, questions for John? We've got a microphone. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, John. With your connect, listening and empathy, do you think those skills can be learnt by everybody to an acceptable standard, or are some people naturally better, obviously, and some people never learn?
There are some people naturally better empathizers. The thing about empathy is you don't actually have to care about the person you're empathizing with. So a classic example is if I was assisting somebody who was, and I have had in the past, to assist dentists who've been guilty of crimes which I couldn't sympathize with. So someone who might, for example, have molested a child or something like that. And in those cases, I can't sympathize with that, but I can empathize. I can understand the fear they have. I can understand the situation that brought it about. And so in terms of making a connection, which is important when you're trying to support somebody. And so you won't like every patient. In fact, there's many patients you will make it so easy for you to dislike them. But you can still empathize. You can still acknowledge the suffering they've had. You know, even the patient who's broken, never finished a course of treatment, who's out there at 4 in the morning, you can still say, I can see you're in pain and it must be pretty awful. That's empathy. And so you can teach people those skills. They teach them to the lowest end of customer care industries, to very, very lowly paid people. And so if they can teach them right through customer care industries, we can certainly teach them in healthcare.
Yeah, but you can always spot the person who's naturally empathetic and the one that's been taught it, I think, anyway.
You can spot some, but if it's taught well, I think that people can do it. And the main thing is not to make it pattern or rhythmic. So if you teach people one set of words, then that looks, you know, the hotel, have a nice day. That's not empathy, that's stupidity.
Thanks, Mick. Any other questions for John?
You can buy, the book on the Invisible Gorilla is out there on the web. You can buy the Invisible Gorilla, and you can get about 28 experiments as well.
Can I just ask, what do you think the future of comprehensive record keeping and things will be with the litigious society? I mean, as you're saying, a few years ago, we wouldn't need to be recording conversations. Now we do in written words. Do you think it will go on to ever get to a point where we need digital records or videography or things like that? What do you see the future of record keeping will be?
Well, I think the biggest expansion that we're going to see, and probably in your practicing career as opposed, because mine is, you know, I'll be pushing up daisies or whatever, but the biggest is social media is going to make a huge difference. And patients are already putting stuff on social media. And we had a case a number of years ago in Australia that we successfully defended, not because of the notes the dentist had, but because of the notes the patient kept themselves. Sadly, they had to turn them over when they said they had them. And all of the warnings about nerve damage were actually in the patient's record, but not in the dentist's. So, you know, which is great. I'd be encouraging my patients to keep the best notes possible. And so I mean, I think we're moving down what's called a shared decision-making route in dentistry, where, you know, it's a joint contract with a patient in terms of getting their health care. But I think social media will. The problem with video and voice at the moment is when do you take that out? You know, we're often asked, do I keep a video record? But the only reason you keep that is to protect yourself, and that's not why you keep a record. And you're never going to listen to that again unless there's a dispute. And so I think there are certain situations where, you know, I'm quite relaxed. I think if you take a reasonable record of the conversation and the notes of treatment, and you've connected and you've listened and you've empathized and you've got a good rapport with the patient, you're never going to have to take out the notes and dispute. So I would be concentrating my efforts on developing my communication skills with patients. But I would, audit records every so often, and a great place to do this, to practice meetings, to see how many gorillas you miss. And your notes will get better, because we don't want the essays. You know, that's the problem. In dental school, we're taught to write essays. You know, Mary arrived, it was 10 in the morning, it was a blue sky. All irrelevant drivel, you know. I just want concrete notes. And the notes are what we discussed: purpose, nature, likely effects, consequences, risks, costs. You know, and it can be quite short.
I think when somebody has a claim, you know, and they feel embittered, as John was talking about from my experience, that there is this situation of, well, it was in the records. So the colleague might say, right, now when I'm going to record everything. But the moment you then engage in that process, every patient through the doors, is told, I'm recording you because you might sue me, and suddenly that whole relationship is completely undermined in the first instance. So it's the depth of records that you maintain now in a relationship. Any more questions for John? Yes, we've got one at the front.
If you give me the question, I'll repeat it. So.
All right. It's basically about with view items and when you're getting consent, you talk about risks, benefits, and all those things. A lot of people seem to be using templates at the moment. So say they're in your notes and you've got a template saying about the risks of extracting consent. Can the patient then claim that you haven't in fact told them everything?
Right. So we've got computerized notes.
And you're using templates.
Using templates, can the patient claim that you
didn't actually tell them, but you just wrote down on the computer? Because I've heard that if you're using templates,
Yeah.
you just copy and paste it. Actually.
Okay, could the patient actually say, well, we never discussed that, he just cut and paste from the computer. Got that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Connect, listen, empathize. Okay. Check understanding. Okay, all there. Because otherwise I could be answering the wrong question, as I've done half my life. Could the patient? They could do, but they're going to have to question your character. And I think that most judges would not view that would be cynical. And you've got an audit trail as to when you wrote the note. If the audit trail says this was put in a week after the patient complaint, you have a problem. As people, if people do endo with pixels, I was much better at getting sealed canals with Photoshop than anything else. So I think the answer is it's a high trust environment. And I don't like templates per se, because they tend to be one size fit all. But if they encourage you, to me, I love checklists. Go onto WHO website and put in checklist, and you'll see simple checklists now that have saved over 500,000 lives. That impresses me. Simplicity. So checklists are prompts. So in consent, we're just coming out with a shared decision-making workshop, which will be launched in July this year, and that has a checklist. It has prompts, because you can never remember it all. And there are certain mnemonics that you could remember, but other things that could be 10 or 15 things. And to have it in front of you as a checklist means that it's a prompt. But I don't think patients might accuse you, but for that to happen, I think the relationship's got to be pretty estranged. And if it's written or it's in there on a record, I think courts will tend to believe you.
Okay. Any final question for John? Okay. Well, John, can I say thank you very much indeed for coming down and speaking to us. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.